It was 11:58 p.m. when Martin Caldwell's phone rang. The sharp, tinny sound pierced through the quiet of his dimly lit living room. He was halfway through a documentary about haunted hospitals, not because he believed in ghosts, but because it was the kind of harmless spook that helped him sleep. Martin, 52, divorced, and a systems technician by trade, didn't often get calls this late. His hand hesitated before reaching for the screen. The caller-ID read, "Unknown number." He frowned. He hated those. Normally he would have ignored it, but something about this one, it was almost like a tug behind his eyes, made his thumb swipe right. "Hello?" No answer, only faint static. He was about to hang up when a sound drifted in. Not a voice at first, but breathing, laboured, slow breathing, like someone was on the other side struggling to speak. Then, in a voice that sounded cracked and distant, like it was calling through layers of dirt, came one word: "Martin." He stood up so fast his knee cracked. "Who is this?" Silence. Then the call ended. The next morning, Martin chalked it up to a prank. He told himself someone had spoofed his number. He had enough tech knowledge to know it was possible. Still, the call lingered in his mind. The way his name had been said, it hadn't sounded mischievous or joking. It sounded terrified. By lunchtime, curiosity had gotten the better of him. He checked his call history. No record of the call. Now that unsettled him. He worked in cybersecurity. He knew phones didn't just delete logs by themselves. That night, while sipping black coffee in the kitchen, his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This time, it was 2:13 a.m. He didn't answer. The voicemail icon appeared. With his pulse rising, he pressed play. It was the same voice, the same slow, cracking breath. But this time, it said more. "You're next. Please, don't answer again. It hears when you do." Martin stared at the phone, unable to move for several seconds. What the hell was this? Over the next few days, the calls came regularly. Always from unknown numbers, always late at night. The messages varied, but the tone never changed. One night, it wasn't even a voice. It was the sound of something dragging across tile, like a body being pulled slowly. He contacted the phone company. They found nothing, no trace of calls, no voicemails in the system. He even replaced his SIM card twice. Then he started receiving calls from numbers he recognized. His sister's, his old office, his own home number, which had been disconnected 5 years ago. Once, he picked up a call from his niece, but it wasn't her voice. It was that same hoarse whisper, only this time it laughed. That night, he threw the phone in the trash. It rang anyway. Martin drove to his sister's place 2 hours away. He needed to clear his head. He didn't tell her everything, just that he was feeling off. That night, while sitting on the porch with a beer, his sister's landline rang inside. She went to answer it and came out looking pale. "It was for you," she said. He blinked. "Who?" "I don't know. A man. He said your name and said, 'He's almost through.' Then it hung up." Martin didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, he tried turning on his phone again. Despite everything, it had never run out of battery, even though he hadn't charged it in days. On the screen was a message. "You shouldn't have answered." Martin began tracking the calls. The times they came, the numbers they showed, even the static patterns. He built a spreadsheet. cross-referenced it with solar flare activity, radio tower disruptions, anything. It became an obsession. Then something in his log caught his eye. The same sequence of digits kept repeating in different combinations. Not a phone number, but more like a date. 07-14-2012. That date chilled him to his core. It was the date of the accident. The one he'd buried under years of avoidance. A crash on a foggy road, the result of one drink too many. He survived. The woman in the other car didn't. He had never told a soul. The case had been ruled inconclusive. That night, the call came exactly at 12:03 a.m. "I remember the way you left me," the voice said, "and now you'll hear it forever." Martin destroyed the phone, burned it in a fire pit. He bought a new one, activated it under a different name, on a different carrier. The next night, the call came again. This time, his own voice answered. It was a recording of himself the night of the accident, panicked, breathless, the sound of the impact and the groaning from the other car. He never remembered recording that, but the phone played it perfectly. He screamed at the phone to stop. He smashed it. And then the landline in the guest house began to ring. The words on the caller ID, "You cannot hang up." Martin moved to a cabin in the woods, off-grid, no power, no signal. He left technology behind, but the calls found him. Old rotary phones began ringing, despite not being connected. Radios crackled his name through static. At night, the woods echoed with the sound of his ringtone, his old ringtone. Then one night, he heard a different voice, a woman's, softer, sad. "You could have stopped. You didn't even look at me. You just drove away." Martin collapsed to his knees. "I didn't know. I didn't see you." The voice grew closer. "But I saw you. I always see you now." And then silence. No more calls, no more ringing. Just a phone on the porch and a note beneath it. "Pick up." It started with a call at 2:11 a.m. Martin was never the type to panic over a late-night ring. After all, he had spent 18 years in emergency maintenance, used to calls at ungodly hours from factories, hospitals, and sometimes hysterical tenants. But this one was different. He lived alone now. His wife had left 6 months ago, and their daughter Ellie was studying abroad. There should have been no reason for anyone to call. Still groggy, he reached for the phone. The number on the screen made him freeze. 00 and 00 and 0000 and. He squinted at it, uncertain if it was a glitch or a prank. He let it ring out. A few seconds later it rang again. Same number. He declined the call, dropped the phone on the nightstand and tried to go back to sleep. But before he even turned his back to the wall, the ringtone pierced through again. This time, he answered. He didn't say a word, and for several seconds, neither did the caller. All he could hear was breathing, slow, almost inhumanly slow. It wasn't like someone anxious or tired. It sounded intentional, like someone was listening through their own silence. Martin cleared his throat. "Hello?" The voice that responded wasn't one he knew, but it was eerily familiar in tone. Deep, rasping, but clear. "She's not where you think she is." Martin bolted upright, his heart thudded in his chest. "Who is this?" Click. The call ended. He sat in bed, staring at the wall. Phone still in his hand. The digital clock read 2:14 a.m. He immediately called Ellie. No answer. Her phone rang twice, then went to voicemail. He tried again, pacing the room now. Still nothing. He opened his contact list and checked for her last message. She had sent him a picture of her coffee earlier that evening, smiling at a cafe, probably somewhere in Madrid. The timestamp said 7:23 p.m. Martin didn't sleep that night. He kept calling her, checking social media, even messaged some of her friends. No one responded. At 7:45 a.m., he called the US Embassy in Spain, reported her as unreachable. They told him to wait 24 hours unless there was confirmed danger. But Martin felt danger. That voice, those words. She's not where you think she is. By the afternoon, he tried calling the mystery number back. His phone wouldn't let him. Invalid number. He looked it up online, and what he found chilled him. A number that doesn't exist. Countless forums talked about receiving silent calls from it, all followed by misfortune. A few claimed it came right before deaths. Others said it was how they warned people. Martin didn't believe in the paranormal, but the next night, the phone rang again. This time, Martin answered before the second ring, the same breathing. But now, there was something else. Faint scratching, as if fingernails were lightly dragging against the speaker on the other end. "Where is she?" Martin snapped, pacing. "You won't like what you see," the voice rasped lower than before. "But you'll still look." Then it sent a message, a photo. Martin stared at the screen, heart racing. It was dark, barely visible, but he recognized the shape of the necklace, Ellie's, hanging around a girl's neck. She was seated against a grimy wall, her face obscured. Was she tied up? Her hands were in her lap, motionless. Martin zoomed in. The picture was taken from above, maybe from a staircase. There was no clue about location. He texted back immediately. "Who are you? What do you want?" No response. He ran to the police. They dismissed him quickly. "You said this is a photo someone texted you, but from an untraceable number." The officer raised a brow. Could be AI generated, a scam, or just a sick joke. Martin couldn't believe it. No one was taking him seriously. But he knew what he saw. He felt it. He went home and started digging. Over the next 3 days, Martin barely ate or slept. He joined online forums, read hundreds of posts. One thread mentioned a guy in Ohio who got a similar call before his sister went missing. Another person in Berlin got the same photo format before her boyfriend was found in an abandoned rail tunnel. They all said the same thing. You don't find the place, it finds you. Some even claimed the calls came from a phone that was never built, connected to a number that shouldn't exist in any country's registry. Martin's house grew darker. He kept every light on, locked every window, double-checked every door. He left voicemail after voicemail for Ellie. He even left messages on her social accounts. Nothing. Then, on the 5th night, the phone rang again. This time, Martin didn't speak. He held the phone close to his ear and waited. The voice whispered, "You left her alone." Martin's blood went cold. She was on a university program. She was fine. No, you stopped listening to her. Suddenly, the call ended and another photo arrived. This time, it wasn't blurry. It showed Ellie, or someone who looked like her, but her eyes were all wrong, empty, black voids. Her mouth was slightly parted, and behind her, a shadow, tall, bent, loomed, its hand almost touching her shoulder. Martin screamed. He remembered something. When Ellie was 7, They visited a now abandoned town in Pennsylvania. There was a broken payphone there she'd been oddly fascinated by. She took a picture with it, said she liked the way it looked lonely. Martin had never thought of that photo until now. Suddenly, it clicked. Could that be it? Desperate, he drove for 6 hours straight, into the hills, to a place no one had lived in since 1992. The payphone was still there, covered in rust, vines curling around it. It had no dial tone. He stared at it. What am I even doing? Then, without touching it, it rang. Martin jumped back. The old receiver dangled slightly. The ring continued. He reached for it. He hesitated only a second before lifting it. The voice spoke without introduction. "She's not there anymore. You took too long." Martin collapsed to his knees. "Where is she? Please, tell me where she is." "Now you see what they want you to see," the voice said. The phone went dead. The line cut. Martin screamed into the hills. Weeks passed. Ellie never resurfaced. Authorities claimed she must have run away or met with an accident. Martin stopped going to work. His eyes hollowed out. Every night he stared at his phone, waiting for 0000001 to light up. And it always did. Every night. Same hour. But now, he no longer heard a voice. Only her voice. Soft. Distorted. "Daddy." Sometimes she'd say it over and over again, like a child lost in a crowd. Sometimes she'd whisper, "It's cold here." Other times she'd laugh, a brittle, broken laugh that sounded like her but not really. He recorded the calls, but when he played them back it was just silence. Nobody else ever heard it. His house grew silent. Dust thickened on everything. He stopped talking to people. They called it grief-induced psychosis. But Martin knew better. He answered the phone. The night James Foster received the first call, he was sitting alone in the living room of his 2-story home in Cedar Creek, a quiet town where the loudest noise was usually the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. It was nearly 11:45 p.m. He'd just finished a mug of chamomile tea, ready to wind down when his phone buzzed once on the coffee table. Unknown number. He stared at it. The screen stayed lit, glowing faintly in the dimly lit room. Then it stopped. One missed call. No voicemail. Curious, James picked it up. Checked the area code. None. Just a long string of zeros. His brow furrowed. "Must be some glitch," he muttered. He turned the phone over in his palm and set it back down. 30 seconds later, it rang again. The same number. This time, he answered. There was no voice, only the faint, laboured sound of breathing. James's throat tightened. "Hello? Who is this?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The breathing continued, shaky, uneven, like someone was standing right next to the phone, too close. Then, just before James could hang up, a whisper crackled through the line. "You shouldn't have answered." The call disconnected. James's heart pounded. He stared at his phone, half expecting it to ring again. But the screen was black. He stood up slowly, suddenly aware of how quiet the house was. It wasn't just silent. It was too silent. No fridge hum, no distant wind, not even the clock ticking. "What the hell?" he whispered. He checked the time again. 11:45 p.m. Same minute. Impossible. Time hadn't moved. Trying to shake off the tension, James rebooted his phone. Once it came back to life, the missed calls list was blank. The call log had been wiped. Even his background had changed. It was now a pixelated image of what looked like his own hallway, taken from an angle he couldn't place. Confused and now deeply unsettled, he checked the camera roll. There was a new video. His thumb hovered over it. He took a deep breath and tapped play. The screen showed a shaky view of the downstairs hallway, his hallway, at night. The timestamp was 11:45 p.m. As the video played, James saw himself appear in the frame, walking past casually with a mug in hand. Then the camera panned slightly toward the staircase. Something stood there, tall, featureless, like a human-shaped void. James dropped the phone. What the hell is going on? The next morning, James tried to rationalize everything. Maybe it was sleep deprivation. Maybe someone had hacked his phone as a sick prank. But no one he knew had the technical skills or the motivation for something that elaborate. He called his carrier. After being on hold for half an hour, the operator came back confused. "Sir, there's no record of any incoming calls last night. No activity at all between 11:30 p.m. and 6:00 a.m. James's voice cracked. "That's not possible." "It's what our system shows," the operator insisted. "Do you want us to escalate the issue?" He hung up before answering. Something felt horribly wrong. That phrase kept echoing in his head. You shouldn't have answered. Over the next few days, James tried to ignore the feeling of being watched. But the signs became harder to dismiss. The house phone rang once, then died. The old answering machine whispered garbled nonsense. His TV flickered on at night, showing static that pulsed in a rhythm, almost like breathing. On the third night, he unplugged everything electronic. Phone, router, TV, even the microwave. Yet at exactly 11:45 p.m, a ringing sound echoed through the house. But there was no device turned on. He followed the sound downstairs. It was coming from the basement. He hadn't been down there in months. With a flashlight in one hand and a baseball bat in the other, James descended into the basement. The air was damp, the smell of old wood and dust thick. The ringing stopped as soon as he stepped off the last stair. At the far end of the room, he noticed something that hadn't been there before. A small, antique rotary phone mounted on the wall. It wasn't plugged in. Still, it rang. He approached it cautiously. The rotary dial was scratched, with no numbers, just symbols that resembled ancient runes. The receiver was shaking slightly on its hook. His instincts screamed not to touch it, but his hand moved on its own. He lifted the receiver. "Hello?" he whispered. A voice, low and rasping, responded. "You've opened the door. It won't close now." The next day, James received a voicemail from his sister. Her voice was trembling. "James, why did you call me last night? Why were you breathing like that? You scared the hell out of me." "I didn't call anyone," James said aloud. He checked the log. 11:45 p.m. Outgoing call. To his sister. He checked his sent messages. Blank. He went into his contacts. One had changed. Under his own name, James Foster, there was a new number listed. When he tapped it, the screen flickered and turned black. Then, from his landline in the kitchen, a sharp ring exploded. James ran to the landline, now sure he'd lose his mind if he answered, but more afraid of what would happen if he didn't. He picked up, yelling, "What do you want from me?" A voice, almost tender now, said, "To remember." Then a distorted scream cut through the line, loud enough to make him drop the phone. His nose started bleeding. As he stumbled back, his cell phone lit up again, this time showing a video call. Against every instinct, he accepted it. The screen showed his reflection, except it wasn't him. It was a version of him with hollow eyes, standing in the same room, but behind him was the thing from the video. Closer now, much closer. James began disconnecting everything in his home. He threw the phones out, smashed the router, and stayed in a motel for 3 days. There were no calls, no strange messages, just silence. But on the 4th day, a phone rang at the motel front desk. The clerk called for James. "Phone call for you, sir." James's face turned pale. "No one knows I'm here." The clerk handed him the receiver. "It's your wife." James hadn't spoken to his ex-wife in years. Shaking, he took the call, but it wasn't her. It was his voice. "Come home. You left the door open." He never returned to Cedar Creek. Instead, James disappeared. Police found his house untouched, no signs of struggle, but every phone in the house, even ones never used, had one missed call at 11:45 p.m. And in each of them, a voicemail. Same words. "You shouldn't have answered. The case remains unsolved." But some nights, if you're alone, you might get a call too. Unknown number, 11:45 p.m. Don't answer it, because once you do, you're no longer the one calling.